Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Azizi Podcast. I'm super excited to present to you my next guest, Jerry Casarez. Jerry is a boxing manager. He, along with his partner and world champion, Jamel Herring, own a boxing management company called First to Fight. Enjoy the show, everybody.
Recording. Jerry Casarez, welcome to Azizi Podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Um, it's kind of funny. We followed each other for a long time on Instagram because we both are boxing people, and you more so. You're actually working in the industry and you're grinding, and I always see you, doing your thing. But we never actually met. And so what happened? Basically, after my podcast with this cool guy that I met, Chaudhry, and he talked to me about the promotion of the fighters and endorsement of the deals. I posted a snippet of that podcast on my Instagram, and you DM'd me saying like, hey, like I actually have experience with that too, and there's so much more to it than what you guys discussed in terms of that little snippet. So,
Right.
and that's why I was like, well, that's awesome. Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to be on my podcast? And you're like, yeah, sure. So basically, let's give a little bit of a background about you. Who are you, sir, and what do you do, and how are you involved with boxing?
All right. Like you introduced me, I'm Jerry Casarez. I go ahead and I'm a part of a company named First to Fight Management. It's myself and World Champion Jamel Herring. He's my partner in
Right.
the company.
Great boxer.
Yeah, great guy, great boxer. We actually went ahead and were able to do something unique, which was take a fighter that's the current world champion and that's been through, the ups and downs of boxing, and take my experiences in the boxing world, having worked with other fighters in the past, having worked with MMA fighters, having worked with promotions and promoters from the MMA world and from the boxing world, and be able to take all that and form a company together, not only to go ahead and help fighters, but to guide them correctly. Because look, there's a lot of managements out there. There's a lot of people that can go ahead and get you a fight. That's not a problem of getting a fight, but it's about planning and building a career and strategizing, because there has to be a plan from start to middle to finish as to where you want to go ahead and take the career of the fighter.
So that's super awesome that we're talking about this, because that's exactly what I've been discussing on my podcast before. And some of my guests basically stated that the management situation for the current professional boxers is not the best one, because again, a lot of managers are not professionals. They don't have necessarily experience to be a boxing or an athlete's manager. And especially in boxing, a lot of the times the boxers would, hire their relatives or their friends,
Right.
without actually looking at their credentials or like their, past in terms of experience. So you are a boxing manager, and you have your boxing
Yes.
management company with Jamel
Yes.
Herring.
Yes.
And-
Yes. And I've been fortunate to be with Jamel for quite some time. I've known Jamel since his Olympic amateur days, and it was one of those things of where I was a fan of his. I was a fan of his because I have a lot of friends and family that have been U.S. Marines. So to see him come through the ranks, and see a military guy, in this case a Marine, break through to the top amateurs and make it onto the Olympic team was something really special for us, because it doesn't happen very often,
Absolutely.
and then to see him obviously now in this phase go on to win a world championship. There's only a handful of fighters that have been, U.S. Marines and that have won a world title. So it's a proud moment. And, we have that experience of what we did with him, and also other fighters that I've worked with. I worked with Sinisa Estrada, super bad. She fights for Golden Boy. And I know what it is, in that case, to see what it really takes to take women's boxing to another level, because there was a lot of days where we grinded, and going back to the Tom Lawfer cards, that we spoke about, Gennady Golovkin's cards, the super fly cards, and even some local promoters, where we needed to really go ahead and show that she was a valuable part of the promotion in terms of being able to generate a crowd, sell tickets, to make her to be able to give her the opportunity to earn good money, and to keep fighting often, because everyone wants to fight. Look, there's a million fighters out there. Everybody wants to fight, but we really need to go ahead and have a plan when we go to the promoter of how we're going to market this fighter. If not, it doesn't matter who they are. You're not going to get very far with it.
So let's talk about those grinding days that you've mentioned. I
Yes,
want to start from the very beginning. How did you get
sure.
into boxing manager? I saw on your resume, basically on your LinkedIn, you started as a marketing guy. You were very involved in the marketing in general, and then would that be fair to say that that kind of led you into management and like getting into the boxing industry? What was your first step in the boxing industry?
Well, my father was a professional fighter, and growing up, I mean, my father fought in the 1920s, and
Hmm.
he fought under the name Babe Herman. So my father had, 100 professional fights and fought for the world
Wow.
title at Madison Square Garden and fought all over the world. His biggest rival was Lewis Kid Kaplan, which is a Hall of Famer, one
Hmm.
of the great featherweights in history. And they had a rivalry that spanned over 5 fights. And growing up, I always knew boxing, but my father, of course, like any parent, they don't want you to get into the sport. What was good for them was, it's not necessarily something they
Right.
want. He
Right.
stressed education, but sooner or later, watching the Hagler, the Hearns, and all those fights with him, it
Hmm.
planted the seed.
Right.
It
Of
planted the
course.
seed. I found the ring magazines. I found the
Hmm.
the ring atlas, with all the records and all his fights highlighted, and
Hmm.
it's in my mind, and I ended up becoming an amateur boxer, and I boxed as an amateur, and that was I loved boxing, and I have so many ring magazines as a kid and growing up, and just being I'm from Los Angeles, so
Hmm.
I grew up in a situation where the gym that I came up in, when it closed, I ended up being forced to go somewhere else, and that was a blessing in disguise because at the time I was a teen and I was heartbroken
Hmm.
that I grew up in a PAL gym that was sponsored by the Police Athletic League Sheriff's Department, and when we lost the funding, it gave me the opportunity to have to find somewhere else to go, and I ended up going to the world famous LA Boxing Club in Los
Oh,
Angeles,
nice.
and that's where I met the likes of Shane Mosley, his father Jack. Uh, I remember Genaro Hernandez trained there, Zach Padilla, Hector Lopez. Name the fighters, they went through there. So it was just, for me, it was a great thing, and yeah, that's what kind of led me on the way. So once upon a time, I had dreams of being a world champion too, but uh, you know, as I got into my early 20s, I had some injuries, and I was out for about a year, and I just decided, you know what, maybe it's time to go ahead and move on, and maybe my competitive aspirations are over. So that's where I found the business, and that's kind of started the next phase of my boxing experience, because along the 90s I knew I had met
Okay.
Steve Kim, and
Common friend of ours.
yeah, Steve Kim, and the great guy, and Steve used to host a radio show here in LA. So I was a kid in high school, and Steve used to go ahead and hook me up with tickets to foreign boxing, and I used to
Oh,
go and watch
that's so awesome.
all the great fights there. And when I'd go to the shows, I was always interested in who the people were behind the scenes. So
Hmm.
you'd see certain characters from the sanctioning organizations, from the management, from the PR, and I was interested in knowing who those people were, because
That's
those
funny.
people
I
were
had the
around.
same thing. Like that's what I am. I'm like when I'm watching boxing, like I'm also like I'm watching the fight, but I'm also looking for everyone who's around the ring and who's doing what.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I'm fascinated by that, and
Yeah.
that sparked an interest. So years later, when Steve had his website along with Doug Fisher and a gentleman named Gary Randall, they
Hmm.
went from House of Boxing to Max Boxing, and
Hmm.
when they created Max Boxing, I was afforded the opportunity of doing some work for them, and
Like
I got to go
what
ahead and
kind of work?
doing video work covering fights, and yeah, I remember getting calls for fights. Hey, you want to go? Get calls from Gary, and he'd say, "Hey, you want to go to Vegas? Fly out there. I need you to cover this. I need you to cover that fight." And we're talking about early 2000s.
Yeah.
2001,
Would
and
they pay for your flights and hotels and all of that?
yeah, I was getting paid. I was paid for my work. That went ahead, and I was, to me, it was like, yeah, this is okay. Yeah, I can go ahead and do this.
Yeah,
I
it's
I
like a
know
dream job.
a lot of the fighters were in the same age group as me, so
Hmm.
I was able to go ahead and get to certain fighters and have them remember me or talk to them, and be able to get them get the coverage or get the interview from them. It wasn't a problem. So it was, yeah, like you said, it's a dream job, and I was like, cool, this is cool. But I took advantage of being there and making sure that I met people. that I met the
Right.
television executives, that I met people, and that I remembered them by name and that they remember me. And I
Hmm.
just kept on, you know, that's how you build relationships in this business. And you really have to go ahead and there's no college in the world that can teach you that. You
Hmm.
know,
Of
that's
course.
something you have to go ahead and learn and develop over a period of time. So
Hmm.
I was able to go ahead and do that, and it paid off because through that I met a lot of fighters, and I was able to help a few fighters along the way. I remember once upon a time working
So
with. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just
Sure.
wanted to kind of dive into that particular
Sure.
subject of meeting people, because for a lot of people, it's actually very hard. For people like me, for example, I love meeting people. I love coming
Yes.
up to folks and just saying hi and introducing myself. But sometimes even I am very shy in depending on who am I meeting, right? How
Right.
was that for you in terms of going out there, and during the fights and after fights parties or before the fights, the weigh-ins? If there's other like different opportunities, how can you like where you can meet people during the boxing event or the fight
Right.
week? Was that difficult for you? How did you approach people? Is that something that you were, basically talented in, just schmoozing and just, connecting?
I mean, I think it comes naturally to me to go ahead and be able to initiate conversation with people, but it did help along the way that, I always thank guys like Steve Kim and Doug Fisher and Tom Gerbasi. He helped me a ton with the UFC brass because he allowed me, he'd recognize me at events and
Mm-hmm.
he'd call me over and he'd make sure that I could meet the Dana Whites of the world, the Lorenzo Fertittas,
Mm-hmm.
the Kerry Davis from HBO, the people that were players in the game, that actually had positions of power and influence. So to me, that was great because I knew that, okay, meeting these people is going to pay off one day.
And so, and I'm asking this because I'm hoping that people who are aspiring to work in the boxing industry know what it entails. So when you
Yes.
meet those people, I want to know like what's your strategy? Do you just simply introduce yourself and you guys exchange contacts, or just making sure that you remember who's who, or do you usually start like some sort of a conversation? Because if you're meeting Dana Whites of the world, for
Yes.
example, it can be very intimidating because they don't have a lot of time and they don't have a lot of attention span to actually memorize some random person right from the street. So
Absolutely.
do you have some sort of a thought about that, like how you want to approach that, how you want to grab their attention?
I'm glad you said that because a few times, you meet people and it's kind of like on a high and by real quick because you're either at a weigh-in or a situation where people are on the move. So you meet someone and you say hi, you introduce yourself. And if you have 15, 30 seconds of their time, you want to make sure that you get a chance to introduce yourself and say your name and, this and that. And remember them by their name because you may run into them. It's a fight weekend. You may run into them again the morning of the fight, or you may run into them in the lobby. And you want to make
Right.
sure that you're able to go and say, hey, it was nice meeting you yesterday, this and that. And now you've got a little more of their time. I remember with Dana White, where I was, covering UFCs because, through that media experience, I was able to cover, do work for a lot of different entities. I was able to
Mm-hmm.
do work for, I remember my video being used by ESPN.
Oh wow.
Yeah, the night that Floyd Mayweather retired against Carlos
Now,
Baldomir,
did they
announced
ask your
retired.
permission to use your video?
Yeah, of course. It was like
Okay.
Max Boxing. I was doing work for them, and
Cool. Okay,
they let
so
me know.
they used your
Yeah,
work.
yeah, they let me know. Hey, guess what? HBO wants your video, and I was
Perfect.
like, wow, all right, and they want to show, because you remember the fight was shown on pay-per-view, and
Mm-hmm.
then a week later they replayed it. So in the replay, they wanted to show that after the fight, Floyd had announced his retirement. No
Right.
one expected that, so the HBO cameras weren't there. I
Mm-hmm.
was there at the right place at the right time. I caught the video,
Mm-hmm.
and so just being able to go ahead and be in a situation like that
Mm-hmm.
was cool. But what I was going to say was that just through my work, I was able to create myself other opportunities. Get published by Fox Sports, become a content provider for them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, get published by. We used to back in the day. Max Boxing used to be a content source
Mm-hmm.
for boxing for ESPN because they didn't have a staff or full-time staff. So, I was just happy that my work was going in and circulating. And I was like, cool, this
Yeah,
is
of course. I mean,
this
this
is
is
going to
great.
open up doors for me to cover more events. So in going to the UFC and covering their events also at the time, because I love MMA and the martial arts, Tom Gerbasi, which was a Max Boxing guy and was editor or is still editor for the UFC. I remember him giving me a call one time at a weigh-in. Hey, we're going to go and have lunch with a couple other guys from the UFC. You want to come? You're going to want to come here. You're going to, he's telling me you're going to want to be here because Dana's going to be here, Lorenzo,
Right.
Joe Silva. So I'm like, wait a minute. The owner, the president, the matchmaker, yeah, I'm here. I'm there. So.
And that's the best feeling, because I've discussed with my guests before. That's not the first time I'm hearing the story, when you're out of the blue getting invited to a dinner or to a lunch with some big people, right, in the industry. And that's just so exciting, because all of a sudden you feel included. You feel like
Absolutely.
you are in that club. So it's
absolutely
pretty cool.
The moments like that is when I was telling myself, okay, I was validating my work, because I was
Right.
like, okay, I'm getting somewhere, because the fans are fans, so you provide them content and they're happy with getting it. But it was, guys that I grew up reading and being alongside them in press row, and then being in the media room with them, and then gaining their respect, and then
Of course.
obviously fast forward to now, I'm able to call a lot of those guys, people that I follow them or they follow me, and I see them in person. I talk to them, and we have a good relationship, and we've been able to go ahead and establish that over the years, from my transition from the media to the business side, and now to management. So yeah, it's a series of circumstances, but the whole time I was interested in learning, and anyone that's trying to break into the business, it's important that you take it like an apprentice, like an apprentice. You need to get in there, and you can't think about making crazy demands about making money. You want to learn. You want to learn, because the information and the knowledge that you're going to pick up is going to be invaluable to you down the line, and that's what's really going to go ahead and be able to separate you from anyone else. There's a lot of people with bright ideas that want to attach them to boxing, but they don't know the people that they need to know in boxing, or they can't get the people that they want or that they need to listen to them, those ideas. And that's how you separate yourself, because you've got to go ahead and start somewhere and build relationships, and
Right.
and cement those over the years, so that when you come to them, and ask them for a fight, or you ask them for a spot on their cards, or you ask them for an interview for your fighter, or there's a rhyme and reason and all that.
How important is trust in boxing? I've been in boxing for, sort of on the surface for the last 2 years, I would say. And based on my experience, I'm seeing a lot of very, I wouldn't say like shady or whatever, something like that, but there's a lot of rumors. People like to talk about different things. People like to talk about what's happening behind the scenes, and they're sort of talking about the other people. And that's something that I did not expect it, because it's a very manly sport, like a gentleman kind of sport. But like what I'm noticing, a lot of people don't act like gentlemen in this sport in terms of like gossiping.
It's a cutthroat business.
Exactly.
It's a cutthroat business. Yeah. It's I mean, to me, my word means something. So for Jamel and I, one of the things that, one of the pillars of our company was that we wanted to have trust, and not only with the fighters, but with the people that we work with, because, we want to have a good reputation. And, if you do right by a fighter, they're going to tell everyone, that'll listen, how great you are and how good you were to them. Whereas if you do a fighter dirty in this business, or you don't deliver on what you should have, man, they that's going to follow you around like a scarlet letter. And there's managers that have been in the business since I was a kid, and I see it. I hear it, and I'm like, wow, and as a fan, you never know it. But then when you step into the business and you hear those things, you're like, man, that's wow, So one of the things that Jamel and I always said was that let our fighters, let our stable of fighters do the talking for us, because the proof is in the pudding. If you guide a fighter and you do right by them, and they have your trust and you have their trust, that's the best commercials,
Now, what do you mean by that, right? So when they let them do the talking, are you talking about like, let's not be Don King of the world and like actually, do the speech, or Eddie Hearns right now? Eddie Hearns is everywhere. Eddie Hearns is always talking, and he's not afraid to say, like, he's always running his mouth or whatever. Like, I'm quoting him, but he's a promoter, and you sort of
so promoters have to, promoters need to make noise. It's 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 part of their storytelling
Right,
that they
and
have
you're
to
a
do.
manager, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
there's a
But if you're
difference.
yeah, but if you're a manager, the greatest advertising for you, we can run around here and pat ourselves in the back like, and do that. But the greatest advertising was going to be your fighters
Mm-hmm.
and their success.
Mm-hmm.
I take a lot of pride in Jamel. I take a lot of pride in Sinisa Estrada, both of them world champions, because I was there when they weren't. I was there
Mm-hmm.
when they weren't, and I was there during tough times, and I know the struggles.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get to the top and you see, okay, now we're getting somewhere, and now not only the fighter's going to fight, but you're going along for the ride with them. You're helping with the things that you're responsible for,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I'm a part of their success.
Right.
And the fighter's always going to go ahead and reflect that, inside and outside the ring. So
Mm-hmm. And so
it's
that's an interesting sentiment, because again, there is a difference between a promoter and a manager, but
yes,
also, on the surface, you don't see as much in terms of management. You don't see the management people in the boxing industry, meaning like on YouTube or whatever. They're not like
right,
so flashy and all of that. But with your experience, coming from a marketing side, and doing, working on the videos and the footage, uh, were you right away thinking to become a manager rather than a promoter? Because it would be sort of a natural transition from marketing to being a promoter and operate under the promotion.
yeah. Well, I went to I went to school for. I have a background in communications and business and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
what I actually went to school for. I have degrees in
Mm-hmm.
that. I also have a degree in journalism. So I actually went to journalism school. That's why when I read stories, I'm and I don't mind to toot my own horn, but I'm a feature writer. I love writing features. That was my favorite part of journalism. I could do investigative. I've actually done serious stories that have ran in newspapers about different
What
things.
what would be your favorite story that you ran?
I mean, just features. I love. I see. That's the one thing that interests me. When I was able to go ahead and have access to the fighters, and I was working in media, I wanted to tell their story, because we have all these fighters and all these world champs, and to me, what was always the most fascinating was where they're from and what their background is and how they
Mm-hmm.
came into boxing. Because
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them, look, they say boxing is a poor man's sport, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a fighter that comes from tough circumstances and perseveres and really gets to that mountaintop in boxing has an interesting story, and a
Mm-hmm.
story that hasn't been told. So that was my thing. I loved going ahead and writing feature stories, and I I see the good in someone's if someone has a rough background or trials and tribulations that they've lived through, you know um, I see the diamond, there, instead of just seeing like the coal, or like the 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 sad story. I see the light at the end of the tunnel, because if they were able to get to where they are now, that's success. That's success.
Mm-hmm.
That's a measure of success. So, I wrote a story on Jamel about, he has an amazing story. I
Mm-hmm.
was able to write a story on Sinisa. And this is before I worked with them in that capacity. I was able to write stories about them, and it came full circle where now I work with them, with
So,
each one of them.
so Jerry, since I have you here, I
Sure,
would like to use your professional free advice on
sure.
how to talk to a boxer. I'm about to talk to a boxer in a couple hours,
Okay,
and he's a prospect, and he's pretty much a contender already,
okay,
uh, but he is still relatively not well known, and I'd like to talk to him. But again, I would like to know about their background, right? I would
right,
like to know how they came, like they're a foreign boxer, came to the United States and, getting to that success level.
right,
But I also know, based on my experience, that a lot of boxers are not privy to responding to, the general questions that journalists are asking them, and a lot of times they're even more frustrated by the questions, and rightfully so, because the questions themselves do not contain a lot of weight behind them, right?
right,
And so I'm going to talk to this guy, and I'll be honest with you, I'm a little bit nervous, because the reason why I talk to people in the industry, not athletes, like I don't have a lot of aspiration to talk to professional athletes, but with this
right.
one, I'm interested because he is a great case study for me. and I talk to industry people because I'm just more comfortable talking about industry rather
Yes.
than the sport itself. So,
Right.
and now I have this opportunity right now, and I'm trying to prepare, and I'm going through everything. But like, what would be your suggestion on how to talk to a boxer who is, again, not relatively like, he's not well known, right? So there's
Okay.
no that championship talk right now. It's there, it's close. So how do you open up? But I'd like to open up this boxer, right? I'd like to present him to the world,
So
and
so
give
it's
his
interesting.
background.
So it's interesting that you asked that. Like, you know, one of the things that I used to go ahead and always pay attention to was we'd be in, let's say, press conference, media scrum, whatever it was. And I already know that everyone's got the prototypical questions, right? You know, like stereotypical questions that are going to go ahead and come, and, you know, they're going to go ahead and ask of the fighters, and the fighters heard it a million times, right?
Right.
But I liked asking a lot of questions that were kind of can be answered with a yes or no answer, or open-ended questions. So they cause the fighter.
You said cannot be answered.
Yeah,
With a yes
cannot
or
be
no?
answered with a yes or no,
Okay.
or open-ended questions, and where the fighter has to go ahead, or the subject has to go ahead and open up and give us a little more information, and then as they're giving you the answer, you're listening. So in that answer, you'll find your next question, because it's kind of like pulling on a rope. You're pulling this part of the rope, but as you're pulling the rope with this hand, you're looking for another spot to reach for it with your other hand. So it's the same thing. When you ask a question, it's an open-ended question. And you're hearing their answer, you're hearing it, and you may hear something in the answer that you want to go ahead and dive deeper into, and then that's your next question. And then that just keeps it going. And that's how the conversation keeps going with the fighter. And before you know it, you'll get the fighter to open up to you. You know, it's something that I learned in psychology, all my psychology classes I took in college.
Nice.
You know, it's just about how to go ahead and get people to go ahead and communicate better with you.
Right.
You know, especially when you're trying to find something out about them. And a lot of times with fighters, you know, like I said, some fighters, you know, well, most fighters have a very interesting story about where they're from, how they got into the sport, and what they experienced, you know, and just you know, being able to get them to tell you their story in their own words is the best, you know, because you're not putting answers in their mouth; they're telling you.
Right.
So, yep. So that's the advice I'd give you.
That's great, and that's something that I will try to aspire to actually make sure to ask meaningful questions rather than yes or no, or something like, you know, are you ready for your next fight? You know, what are you going to change?
Look,
like,
anytime you can go ahead and get a fighter to think about a memory, whether good or bad, you know, you'll hear them pause, and you'll hear them reflect, because in their mind they're thinking about it, and you know, you may get an expression out of them, and maybe a wow, you know, like they're thinking about something sad, or if it's a memorable thing, they might smile a little, and you see it, and when you see it, that's when you okay, I got something. And then they start telling you about it, and then that's when you can keep tugging at it and get them to tell you more.
Awesome, and thanks so much. I actually appreciate that response, and I'll definitely think more about it. So let's go back to your life again.
Sure.
So at what point did you realize, all right, I want to get into the industry deeper than just being than just telling a story about it? I want to be a participant. I want to be a player in that story, like a hero in that story.
There was a few times in my life, like for example, you know, I boxed growing up, so I love boxing. My other love was the martial arts. You know, like if it's three things I love in the world, it's boxing, the martial arts, and music. And a lot of my friends were were involved in hip hop, and ended up becoming artists. And I grew, you know, I grew up in you know, in a part of LA where I had you know, a lot of great hip hop people that came up from.
So which part was that? Tell us.
I grew up in LA, but you know, I'm not too far from like where Cypress Hill grew up, and I saw that whole movement. Cypress Hill, I know their brother of the group, which was the founder of Latin hip hop. He was the first Latin artist to ever get a major record deal with Capitol Records, Melon Mayonnaise, and then their house was a target for like people coming through there from other parts of hip hop, like NWA and Ice Cube, and so I was able to go ahead and get exposed to a lot of that early, and you know, that was just my life. I loved boxing, I loved music, the hip hop scene,
and I've noticed you working with some hip hop artists as well. There's Yes,
Yeah,
please.
that's the seed, that because it all came full circle. Like, I always say, and I tell some of my fighters this: if I didn't end up working in boxing or in fighting, I would have ended up in the music business, because the passion for music is there also. But
Hmm.
I love boxing. I love boxing and I love fighting,
Hmm.
MMA. So growing up, I was also a martial artist. I practiced martial arts, and I wrestled and I did judo. So
Hmm.
like I always, uh, I remember a friend of mine. Uh, they were training with a guy, and they were all high school wrestlers, right?
Right.
But they were training with a guy, and then years later, I ended up finding out that that was Hoist Gracie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he was getting ready for UFC one.
What do you
So
think
then,
about? Yeah. So please finish that, and I'll start, and I'll ask my next
yeah,
question.
so like I'm like, wow, and then I got to meet Hoist himself, and this is in the '90s, and I'm like, man, I got to meet Hoist Gracie, and like, again,
Uh-huh.
I watched UFC one, UFC two, I know who he is. Maybe everybody else doesn't, but I know who he is, and that blew my mind, because I got to meet him, and I got to meet his brothers, and uh, later on his nephews,
Hmm.
which I got to train with, and it was amazing. It planted the seed in me, be like, it's his family that's running the show.
Right.
It's his family that's organizing the UFC. And it planted something in my mind, like, man, I'm interested in the business. And just like I have Ring magazines, I have Black Belt magazines and Kung Fu magazines.
Uh-huh.
So at that point, it kind of sparked the interest. And that's why I said, when I used to go to the shows at the Forum for Forum Boxing, okay, everyone knows that Jerry Buss is the owner of the Lakers. But I saw Jerry Buss in a different light. I saw Jerry Buss as the owner of Foreign Boxing. I saw
Uh-huh.
Jerry Buss as a promoter, Marco Antonio Barrera. Uh, you know, this to me was mind blowing, because yes, this is a guy that owns the Lakers and has Magic Johnson and all these great athletes, under his franchise, but he's a big player in boxing that people really, with over the years, have kind of forgotten about. And
Hmm.
to me, as a kid, I was like, this is awesome, because I'm here on a weekday and I'm seeing him ringside, and he's going ahead and having influence on the careers of Marco Antonio Barrera, Juan Manuel Marquez, so many great fighters that came out of foreign boxing.
Hmm.
So that planted the seed, and then later on, I got the chance to work with Mighty Mike Achando, which was one of Golden Boy's first world
Okay.
champions, and I got to go ahead
So
and work.
so
Work.
before that,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to quickly
Sure.
ask you, because I'm always curious about that. Do you notice how crazy people are getting about jujitsu? Like it's
Yeah,
becoming it's becoming
I've seen it.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm considering it myself, to start doing jujitsu, because everyone's saying that that's the most sort of an effective sport, martial art in a street fight, right? If you know
Right.
jujitsu, you're pretty much a killer. But it's becoming a sport of, because there's a Gracie Barra gym here in Toronto, in
Yes.
Canada, and I'm considering getting a membership. It's a little bit pricey, right? And but it's becoming a sport of elite. Like you're seeing business people, Hollywood people, the notorious scientists from MIT. They all go to the jiu-jitsu,
Right.
they study jiu-jitsu, and there's something about it. And of course Joe Rogan is a huge proponent of that, and he's always kind of pushing jiu-jitsu. Like,
Right.
what's I mean, isn't that crazy? Because I mean, I get it, it's a martial art and it's a self-defense and all of that, but I think there's something more to it. What do you think?
Yeah. For me, the it's funny you say that, because I have a lot of friends in hip hop that have also gotten into jiu-jitsu over the years, right?
Mhm.
And when they got attracted to jiu-jitsu and they really dove deeper into it, it was because maybe that was a stress aggregator for them, or an outlet for them to
Mhm.
unwind, and just, it's a lot of yeah, you're competing with someone else, or you're learning from someone else, but a lot of it is internal. You're figuring things out on your own.
Mhm.
It's not just, you can't get away with just being a brute. You
Right.
can't just be strong. And that's what I learned, because when I first jumped into jiu-jitsu, having wrestling in my background, I wanted to go ahead and grab everyone and take them down and just sound. And then I realized that they want to be there. They want
Right.
to be on their back, and they were taking my arm, and I was getting tapped out a lot early, and I was just like, okay, or I was getting choked. But I started learning, okay, it's jiu-jitsu is a gentle art.
Right.
It's an ebb and flow. So it's really good. I love it. Out of all the martial arts that I've been able to study over the years. It's by far my favorite, and it's very addicting. Once you start doing it, you want to go ahead and okay, I'm training a couple of times a week. Okay, I'm gonna try to get in the third day. Oh, Saturday's open mat. Let me try to get in there and get some mat time. So yeah, it's a lot of people are taking to it, and you're right, celebrities and a lot of people in pop culture are starting to study, and it's great. I saw Jonah Hill took it up when
No
he was
way.
losing weight. Yeah, and he's
That's awesome.
yeah, and he trains at a gym out here in Southern California. So it's
Uh-huh.
cool to see. It's cool to see
Right.
when it when it can help people. But yeah, it's jiu-jitsu's had a big explosion. It's probably been it's probably the last 2-3 decades
Mhm.
done what kung fu did in the 70s and 80s.
Mhm.
As far as exploding.
That's so funny. So let's go back to the first fight that you were involved with the Golden Boy.
Yeah. Like, so for example, I was able to go ahead and, everything leads to something, because just going back to Marco Antonio Barrera. Well, Marco Antonio Barrera was a fighter that was with Foreign Boxing. And I saw his rise from cards on KCal 9 on Saturdays. And, that's how I met Rich Murata. Rich Murata calling the fights, local cards that were taking place in Reno or in Nevada, and then or in LA, and then he finally made it onto HBO. And then along the period of his career, most people know that Roberto Diaz from Golden Boy, the matchmaker, used to work with Barrera's team. Used to be a part of that team, and this was before he was a matchmaker, and that's how I first met him. Because I was again paying attention to who are the people around the fighter, and he was one of the people that was always a gentleman and a great guy, and I met him, and then I saw his rise at Golden Boy, and he's a friend, and it was important to go ahead and just have friends like that or relationships like that, because years went by before I ever even asked Robert for something, Robert Diaz, but I do remember the first time that I asked him for a spot on one of his cards, hey, Robert, this is, and I didn't only go ahead and tell him, hey, I want a spot on your card. I had an idea behind it. Can we sit down? Can we talk about this?
You had a value proposition.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had numbers. I wanted to show him what budget I needed, because listen, man, I was doing everything. I match made, too.
Right.
When we would get fighters to fight locally, okay, we need this much money. I already negotiated with the opponent. I talked to the opponent's management. So I was coming to the promoter and telling them, I already have a fight. I need this much money. So if we need to sell this much amount of tickets, we'll sell it. And, we'll take them on consignment. And then if we don't sell the tickets, I have money to back it. So we'll go ahead and pay for whatever we don't sell. And obviously, we were able to always sell the tickets. So
right. So that's you came in there for that deal with a huge confidence.
Yeah, because like I knew that, look, we have a fighter. She's popular. She's been able to go ahead and fight on a lot of Southern California cards. We want a chance to fight on a Golden Boy card. It's different. It's female. It's never been done on the televised part for Golden Boy. And he liked the idea, and I give a lot of credit to Robert Diaz, because Robert went ahead and he could have said no. He could have said no, and that would have been the end of that.
Right.
But Robert was open to the idea, and we gave a good show. Sanisa put on a great show, and that planted the seed to her ended up ended up signing with Golden Boy. So that was great.
Would you say that was your first official deal in mainstream boxing? With the
for the boxing part on a larger scale, yeah, because I had put on fighters on local cards. Right. To me, it was like I had put fighters on like her. We were able to get her on Triple G undercards, and to me that was a big deal, because Tom Offer is a big promoter also. He has Gennady Golovkin. He was doing the Superfly cards. We were able to get her on the Superfly card, and believe it or not, like I know that in the final years of HBO. There was other women that got on television, got televised before HBO boxing came to a halt, like Clarissa Shields and Cecilia Brækhus. But I really wanted to push hard, because I saw people, Roy Jones, Max Kellerman. I saw these people get excited when they watch Sinisa fight. They were
Uh-huh.
like, Roy Jones is a big fan of hers, and he was like, whoa, she fights like me, you know, because she throws double, triple hooks, she moves around, you know, and she's an intelligent fighter, and she scored knockouts, and she really, you know, for a small girl, she was really putting on a show, and and they noticed that. Okay, we're getting close. You know, I'm going to keep on lobbying. We're going to get her on TV, you know? And then the blessing came from the people at Golden Boy and Robert Diaz, and, you know, we were able to make it happen so more people would see her, you know?
So since we're talking about the deal, I feel like it's important, and to the extent that you can talk about it,
Sure.
to talk about the priorities of the deal. So when you are representing a boxer, that you're trying to make sure that the boxer have a spot on the undercard or any other sort of you know, model, what are your priorities? What are you trying to make sure that it's there? And maybe you can give like us like even more examples of like your deals that you've conducted afterwards, because you did mention, you know, some of the things that you've done, and I just want you to elaborate on that. And but
Yeah.
I'm also very interested in the details. Like I want to know what's in your mind when you're creating a deal. What are your priorities?
Right. So see, me having a business and marketing background, I can go and get the deal. I can go and get the deal because if I can go and secure the money and the opportunity to go in and represent, you know, for a brand, now I have to come to get the platform, because if I secure the platform, okay, now I know the outlet that I have, and I can go ahead and demand or ask for a certain amount of money based on that platform, you know? So it's been no different for Sinisa's fights, because, you know, we have with her, you know, we've had some great sponsors. I mean, we have, you know, Ruka. Ruka is, for a lot of people that don't know RBCA, you know, RBCA is a company that was founded by a friend of mine, Pat Tenori, and I met Pat through the world of MMA, and it's a, you know, it's a lifestyle brand. You know, they had done business with a lot of MMA fighters, but primarily surfers. You know, Ruka sponsors a lot of international surf tournaments or volleyball tournaments and things like that.
Which is also a huge industry for those who don't know. The
Absolutely,
surfing, there's so
and for
much.
people that don't know, Ruka has since its you know, coming to, you know, since its inception, like, it's went ahead and actually become a part of the Billabong family. Billabong's
It's a huge
probably
brand.
one of
Yeah,
the biggest brand in the world, you know, like in terms of like just their size and just their popularity. But
even I had a lot of clothing from them, and I don't even surf or whatever.
yeah,
Still
yeah.
had
So
that.
it shows you the impact it's made. Like, people like the clothing, you know. So, you know, I was able to go ahead and I was lucky enough to have met Pat through a friend of mine, Jason Perillo, the trainer of a lot of MMA fighters. Jason was a boxing guy himself. And then I was able to introduce Sinisa to them. I took Sinisa to their private gym. And it's funny because she used to go ahead and ask her, we laugh about it now, but she used to, what are we doing here? This and that. I'd be like, I need you to meet some people. So it was
So
great.
that's interesting. So when you introduce your fighter, your client, right, to sponsors and all of that, how does this go? And do you usually instruct your fighters, or you kind of trusting them that they will conduct themselves in the manner where sponsors would be interested in sponsoring them?
Well, truth be told, in her case, like, I told her, hey, you know, like, I let her know what my plan was, but you know, she was young at the time. You know, she was younger at the time, and so I think she was like a bit of like, you know, what are we doing here? You know, she didn't see the big plan, but she laughs about it now because she understands now. Now it's totally different. Now I just call her up or text her, hey, I got this. I'm working on this. You know, and then she was like, and then we just have like quick conversations, like, this is the amount of money. This is what I need you to do. Da 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 da. And she's like, okay, good. Work it out and work it out and tell me where I have to sign. You know, and then we get it done. And the same thing with Jamel. Jamel's super easy to work with because I go ahead and tell Jamel, hey, you know, we got this sponsor, and this is what the opportunity is, and this is the length of the deal, and this is what we need to do. Jamel says, cool, work it out, and let me know where to sign, and let's go forward with it, you know. And then he comes up with ideas sometimes himself too, because he'll say, hey, well, what about if we do this? And Jamel's so good at social media in terms of like interacting with people that he really makes every follower count, because, you know, I don't know if you've seen him online before, but like he interacts with the fans.
He
Like
responds. Yeah.
he talks to them like he's talking to everyone about boxing every day, whether it's his fights or not.
Yeah,
He's
and
just interacting with people.
he has a great reputation too. I just spoke with my previous guest who had an opportunity to interview him, and they said like he's just such a great guy, and he can become your friend automatically, like right away.
Oh yeah,
If you guys
absolutely.
click, right, he totally open to you and to have that relationship.
Absolutely, absolutely. He's one of my favorite people that I've met, not only in boxing but in life, because Jamel's a great guy, and he really goes ahead and sees things, and he has it's funny because he wears different hats now. He wears a manager's hat, and he also has we joke with him about it, but he has a promoter's eye because when I like even his current fight that we're talking about, the Carl Frampton fight. When I first presented that idea to him last year, he had just become world champion, and it was like, hey, we have a voluntary defense after a mandatory. Who do we take on? Where's our big fight? What do we do?
Right.
And so, we knew that some of the other champions of the division weren't so anxious to fight Jamel because he's a slick southpaw that's tall. So then I started looking around, and when I talked to him about Carl Frampton, and I said we could go to Ireland and listen to me for a second. Jamel understood it right away. Jamel understood it. He picked up on it, and he said, "Oh, okay." A little known fact that people don't know about is that both Jamel and I are big wrestling fans, pro wrestling fans, right?
Oh, cool. Okay.
Right. So yeah. So from like the old school days till now, and people could learn a lot about promoting and marketing from professional wrestling.
So give me a couple examples.
Yeah. Well, so for example, like when you go ahead and see like Jamel going over there to Ireland, like here in the United States, Jamel is an American hero. He's a great guy. He has a story where a veteran of 2 tours in Iraq, and he has this great, unbelievable story. Olympian, a champion, but over there it's Carl Frampton that's the beloved fighter,
Right.
because he's the home fighter. So you have to kind of reinvent the wheel to say, well, how do we go there, and how can we make this fight bigger, And Jamel understood that, hey, I go there, I'm the heel. I'm the heel, because
he's the bad guy.
Yeah, of course. And of course, let's look. I believe in my abilities. I believe in myself. We're gonna go there. We're confident, and we'll go there and we'll make it a bigger fight. Here it's a big fight, but over there it's even bigger.
Right.
So Jamel understood that. And that's what made it easy for us to go ahead and tell Top Rank, hey, look up this. Okay, and I remember we told Carl already, but he's like, you guys are crazy. What are you guys talking about? Like, he's not going to want to fight you guys. A year later, here we are.
That's great. That's so cool.
But, marketing of it, you got to go ahead and understand the angle. How do we sell this fight? Same thing with like, I love Tanisa because she understood when she was fighting Marlon Esparza that, okay, they have a beef and, it's been going on for a long time. But fight week, I couldn't be any more happy because she really, really surprised a lot of people because she played it up and she knew how to push buttons and get the reaction. And then, just even at the press conference where she pushed her, that was great. That's a pro wrestling angle if I ever seen one,
I like that.
Yeah, they got a lot of people's attention. Then all of a sudden that became the fight. One, in my opinion, I thought that was the best fight of the night. That was the best fight of the night. Kovalev Canelo was kind of like, it played out hard. It was kind of slow for a long time, and then we got a conclusive result. But the fight overall was kind of like a bit of a snoozer. Maybe they were still asleep because they were in the locker room sleeping for a while. But
wasn't that crazy, by the way? How crazy was that? The whole waiting until the UFC is done.
Yeah, look, I understand it's competing businesses, and you're going at the same time across overlapping.
Right.
But listen, like I mentioned before, I have friends that are in the music industry, and if 2 concerts are going down at the same time down the street from each other, one doesn't stop for the other because those people are going down to the show goes on,
Right.
The show goes on, and you just have to do that. You can't go ahead and wait. You have to believe in your fan base and just say, hey,
exactly. We'll move on. And I agree with you as well. But like ultimately, do you think it helped them? Do you think the fact that they sort of stopped that fight, and I'm sorry for like kind of digressing into that.
No, it's fine. Yeah.
The fact that they stopped and waited until UFC is over, did that actually help them? Do you think it brought more subscribers to the zone, or or was it just like a fluke that should have been happening at all?
I don't know. I mean, for me, I was happy because I got to watch the other fight too.
Okay,
I was
so
sitting there with
maybe
my
there is some value in that.
Yeah,
That
I
made
was
you
sitting
happy?
there with like we had one of our sponsors, my buddy Ramses from King Shocks. He went ahead and sponsored Sinisa, so he's a big MMA fan since his days at Toyo Tires and before that.
Right.
So
right.
we're sitting there. He wants to watch the main event, but at the same time, hey, we get to watch Nate Diaz fight.
Exactly.
Jorge Masvidal. Let's watch it.
Yeah.
So for people that were a fan of both, I'm sure they were happy. But I don't know how much of a impact. Maybe it did. Maybe people went ahead and that were at home said, okay, the fight's over. Oh, let's put it on the zone. The Canelo's about to fight, and maybe they did get people to tune in.
So
that was buzzing online. It's trending.
Right. But do you think there's a huge crossover between the MMA fans and boxing fans who actually you were happy that they got to see both?
I think there is a lot of. I think there's a. If I had to do a graph, there were there's at the pit of it. There's a lot of fans that are crossover that love both sports, but then MMA has a lot of fans that are newer to the sport and they might know a handful of the current fighters, or they might follow the sport because they're a big fan of Conor McGregor, and then that leads them to exposure of more fans. Whereas in boxing, I think if you're a boxing fan, you're a fan of predominantly most of the sport, and you're learning, or you at least know, most of the things in boxing, but then you're learning about the smaller fighters or the more the European fighters or the international fighters, and your knowledge is growing. So it's kind of I think it's a good percentage that's crossover fans, but I don't know if you if you can always go ahead and depend on winning over that crowd, because it's a hit or miss. I think on the big fights you can go after them, because I think when the Canelo Alvarez fights or Anthony Joshua fights or now Tyson Fury fights, the whole world pays attention, the whole world pays attention, so you get the interest from all those casuals.
Going back to endorsement deals,
Sure.
do you feel like boxers nowadays to what extent do they understand the importance of not just the huge endorsements from Adidas, or huge endorsements from the Casarez and Coronas of the world,
Right.
but also the smaller local scale endorsements? Do they realize that it's equally important that for their brand to make sure that they have that portfolio of brands that trust in them? And who explains that to them, and how do they explain that to them?
So I'm glad you asked that, because nothing breaks my heart more than at any level of boxing when I see a fighter come out and their trunks are empty. Because I'm thinking, wait a minute, all these people around you, and they come out with a big honor. I'm thinking, wait a minute, all these people around you, and you can't get one sponsor. I watched last night Tapia versus Ayala, right? They were showing them on Showtime. They showed part 1, part 2 of it. And I couldn't help but notice that even in the rematch, Paulie Ayala had no sponsors on his trunks. And I'm like, look, I get it. This was late 90s, early 2000s. But you got to be kidding me. No one around him could get him a sponsor? Not one sponsor? Come on, man. This is crazy. This is crazy to me. And when I noticed that. So it starts at on the local scene, because, even when Sinisa was starting off, we were able to go ahead and get her local sponsors. And that was important because, hey, look, if you're a fighter that's fighting a 4-rounder and you can double your purse with local sponsors, why wouldn't you want to do it?
Exactly.
And it's not something you have to go ahead and do on your own. You just have to go ahead and empower someone around you to do it. And they can go ahead and, look, you have to put together your media kits. You have to go out there and you have to knock on doors and present yourself and say, hey, look, hi, I'm such and such. And then we have social media, so the connection, the ability to go ahead and connect to more people is even greater, now. So I don't understand why you wouldn't want to do it,
Which again, it's not per se a responsibility of a boxer, which it would be great if boxer also kind of pays attention to that, but that's exactly why boxers have managers.
Right, exactly.
So does that mean that just managers don't do their job right when you see the trunk? It's kind of, by the way, it's so funny that when you see a fight, right away you look at their trunks and you see whether they're empty or not. That's such a cool professional detail about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's the management managers have to wear a lot of hats, and we have the night that the NBA shut down, right? We had a dinner with one of the fighters we're going to work with, right? And so we sit down, and Jamel and I also have our partnership with Sheer Sports, where we co-manage fighters together. So depending on the fighter, we call our buddy Lyle over there, and we talk to him, and Ken Sheer, and we'll say, hey, look, we want to work with this fighter. We want to do this, and we have a partnership. And it's a beautiful thing, because when we sit down with a fighter, we explain to them what each and every one of us brings to the table, and how their strength in numbers, and we're going to get things done. And so that's a great thing that we have over any other management group, because look, I have a marketing background. I can also write a press release. I can go ahead and come up with interviews for you in the media, because I have those relationships. We have relationships with different promoters. Jamel has a great relationship with a lot of different promoters also. The matchmakers, we can talk to them also. So these are things that we're able to do. And then also Jamel leverages his position in the boxing world as a world champion with his sponsors, and says, hey, I want
who's still active, by the way. So
absolutely. And says, hey, I want you to go ahead and also endorse my fighter. I have a fighter that I signed, and I want you to endorse them. So these are
and I would assume there'd also like an undercard opportunities for the championship fights, to be on the
absolutely,
undercard as well.
yeah. We can use that situation where, hey, I'm gonna fight. I'm gonna go ahead and put you on my undercard, and then Jamel and I will have a conversation about, we're gonna bring on this sponsor, maybe a betting website, and we're gonna go ahead and take care of. We did a package deal. We're gonna take care of you, and we're gonna take care of them. I do that all the time for, like, let's say, for example, Sinisa and Jamel fought both in November, right? So they fought a week apart. Right. It's just crazy, because that was a hectic couple of weeks.
Of course,
there,
I mean, you're managing two projects at the same time, pretty much.
Yeah, so like she fought on the 2nd, and he fought on the 9th, and we're able to get them sponsorship deals, where a sponsor package deal took care of both of them. Okay, and that was me doing my job, because I'm like, okay, I was able to go ahead and say, I'm going to get you this, I'm going to go after this sponsor, and okay, I come back and I say, hey, they're going to take care of you, and they're going to take care of Jamel, or they're going to take care of Jamel, and they're going to take care of Sinisa, and here's how much you guys are each going to get. We need to do this. This is the terms of it. Sign your deal. Let's send it back. And then they fight. And then I have to go ahead and get into town and make sure that their trunks have the logos on it, and have everything that they need, and that they're, even on fight week, even the day of the weigh-ins, whatever, that we're pumping out the content that we need, and the hashtags and the tags in it. And it goes a long way, because you have to go ahead and make sure that you take care of your sponsor, and you're taking care of business. Of course. Same thing, a little known fact, like on the Fury Wilder rematch undercard, buddy of mine's, Peter Kahn, has Amir Iman, and he fought on the card. I was able to help them out with the sponsorship, and I said, yeah, no problem. So went ahead and got a deal worked out, and it's a sponsor I had worked with before for Sinisa, so we had built the relationship, and we got the deal done. And I got into town, I grabbed the trunks, I put the logos on there, I got the patches made, and that's stuff that gets done. And then got the trunks over to Peter, and got them the exposure that they paid for, and he delivered. We got the pictures up, tagged them, and did all the social media that we had to do. You got to go
exactly. And I know personally that those are small details, getting the trunks, making sure that the patches are there, but someone has to do this job. And
absolutely.
If someone messes up, the boxer will lose their endorsement if the patch is not there. So, I mean, there was no deal if that's not there. So, and a lot of things.
The logo's not right. The
exactly.
artwork, even the artwork, look, I got to go back with art departments or the marketing directors of these companies, and I have to ask them, hey, please send over the file. Oh, you didn't send over the correct kind of file. See, my background, having gone through college, I took photography classes. I took photo editing classes. I'm familiar with Photoshop, Adobe Premiere, Final Cut. So there's content you have to create. Like, I do a lot of highlights, and I used to do a ton of them for Sanisa because when she was first going in, and I was just trying to get her name out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a funny story because, and on Facebook, and I remember when I approached her about, hey, make a nice an Instagram account, because I knew. I said,
Right.
make an Instagram account. She goes, I don't like Instagram. I don't want to go on there. I don't get it. And I was like, make an Instagram account. And when we first started getting our first followers, and then now she has like so many followers, and
Right.
and she really gets it now. But it's funny because that was a conversation that we had, and then now where she is now,
Mm-hmm.
it's content. You have to create content, and Jamel's really good at it because he's playful with his content. Some of it has to do with boxing, some of it doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
but it's entertaining, and it's your own TV channel. You got to go ahead and look at yourself as like, I'm a brand. I'm a brand. I need to go ahead and make this entertaining for the fans, and I need to make this rewarding for my sponsorships and all their sponsor companies that we deal with. They all laugh because they go, man, he's a fun follow. He's entertaining.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
So
yes, please go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, I mean, like, and a lot of that I learned because just the mindset behind getting the sponsorship, because I've done it for promotions also. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, a lot of people don't know this, but I've gotten sponsorships for promoters. The UFC, we went ahead and I believe it was an Ultimate Fighter finale, the first time that we went ahead and announced. You know, I have a background in technology, right? So I was able to work in the technology field for years.
Right.
And one of the companies that we work with is the car alarms, Viper Alarms, right? But DEI, Directed Electronics, they go ahead and manufacture all kinds of different things. They have a ton of different product lines under them. So there was a car audio line that they had, and they were trying to really get exposure. And we talked, and we had the conversation, and the opportunity presented itself for them to go ahead and sponsor the UFC. And
Mm-hmm.
they understood what I was telling them about this being a big marketing thing and how it could work for them. And they said, okay, great. And it was just being a part of that, and seeing that grow into it, and seeing their logo on the canvas of a UFC was like surreal, like,
Right,
wow,
because that
okay,
was because of you, because you made it happen.
these are two worlds you're crossing. And like, there was other brands that got involved. MTX at one point, which was a speaker manufacturer, they built a fight team, and seeing them at these trade shows with the fighters there signing at the booths,
Mm-hmm.
it started showing that an automotive industry could get behind fighting.
Right.
Toyo Tires dove in with the UFC, and I have tons of friends at Toyo Tires. My friend Ramses, that's now at King Shocks, used to go ahead and be a marketing director over at Toyo, and I used to see him sponsor and put together the deals for the UFC. So you learn from all these experiences and seeing the business happen and understanding what it takes to be, a good sponsor, and to be involved in a good sponsorship, because it's a two-way role. A good sponsor takes care of the athlete and the team
Right.
that's involved in the deal, but also the athlete or the platform has to go ahead and reward the sponsor so that they want to come back and
Right.
they want to do deals again.
So, Jerry, what's the hardest part about securing a sponsorship?
Just I mean, you have to go ahead and have conversations with the fighter or the
Mm-hmm.
athlete where they understand that they need to go ahead and create a platform. And they could say, oh, I'm a local fighter. Well, that's fine. You have to go ahead and state where you're from, and start a local campaign. If you're a fighter from Los Angeles, great, represent. you know the fans take pride in what's like them. uh, if you're a Dodger fan, you may be a Dodger fan because you're from LA and that's your team, and
Mm-hmm.
you identify with them. It's no different in this sport. You identify with things.
Mm-hmm.
Jamel, we were able to take the things that he is and be able to market them. He is a Marine. He takes pride in that,
Right.
and that's something that we always go ahead and talk about, because he's so proud of it. So why not show it? And his nickname is Semper Fi, and we play it up. Sanisa, super bad, and she understands things because she started saying, I want to do a cape. I want to do a cape. And that sets her apart from everyone else, and then like,
Uh-huh.
at her fight, she comes out to James Brown super bad, and like, and yeah, it's so like these are parts of their personality that come out, like, and whether a fighter's an introvert or an extrovert, you have to go ahead and really have communication with the fighter and understand, okay, this is who the fighter is as a person. I need to share that, because you know, with anyone, you could sit down and you could say, "Oh man, my friend's really funny," but nobody knows it because you're the only one that experiences it because they trust you enough to be
Right.
funny around you. So you need
Right.
to go ahead and find those little facets and apply them. And then the other part is this: using relationships that you have and that you've built to go ahead and get your fighter greater exposure, so that you can leverage those into sponsorships. Like, musicians, we have relationships with different promoters. Um, like, so we were able to go ahead and take Sinisa and Jamel to different concerts and different events. And before this whole thing happened, get them, put them out there where they're able to meet the artists and this and that, and that builds a relationship between them. And or one of our sponsors is part of the legendary Dilated People, the hip hop group, Rocka, and Rocka was one of our marketing director for one of our sponsors. So
That's cool.
he's able to use his platform that he's built through music
Uh-huh.
to post about Sinisa, to post about Jamel. And it's great because now I have my friends, representing our fighters and our brands, and it's all helps, it's all one, it's all part of the same effort,
Absolutely.
So that's how you got to go ahead and connect the dots here, like between the two different things. It's sponsorships, but it's also the relationships and the platforms you're able to develop and how to connect them together. And then let the sponsors know, hey, we have these relationships. So it's not your sponsorship isn't just going to live and die
Right.
On Instagram. It's going to go beyond that.
Yes, and I feel like that goes for every manager or aspiring manager in the fight industry, that it's not only being a gatekeeper for different people like reporters or journalists or whatever, it's also doing all the footwork. As you said, you're not just trying to secure sponsorship, but just like a lot of work, as I see, like a lot of work goes into there, a lot of schmoozing, a lot of chatting, a lot of calculation, but you're also
Right.
doing the little things. Yes, you said you're wearing, a lot of hats and doing the design and all of that, if needed, right, with your
Right.
tech background. So that just goes to show that being a manager of a boxer is not just being, a guy who will, just give you like a quick advice or be like a gatekeeper and
Yeah,
not allow.
or that's gonna come and tell you, hey, you have a fight. You have a
Yeah,
fight. And,
yeah.
and well, okay, anybody can get you a fight, but the other question is, where does that fight take you? What does this fight mean? Okay,
Right.
what's the rhyme and reason behind this fight?
What's the cost benefit analysis basically? What's the pros and cons and how much monetary value that will add to your
Yeah,
brand?
because like, look, during this, there was a period where activity was invaluable to us, right? I wanted to
Mhm.
keep Sinisa because she was like kind of like in the music industry, we use the thing, an independent artist, right? So
Right.
she didn't have she didn't have a promoter behind her, but she was an independent fighter, So here we are, and there was a point where she fought 3 times, and I think
Hmm.
the span of 50 days.
Hmm.
That's a lot.
That's
Three
crazy.
fights in 50 days, 45,
That's
50 days. And
ridiculous.
yeah, we fought on Tom's card. We turned around and fought 2-3 weeks later on Golden Boy card televised. And then
Oh my God.
2-3 weeks later, we fought on Bass Boxing card in downtown LA.
Right.
And look, not only her fighting, the toll it takes on a fighter, because,
Exactly.
look, you got to get up and down. That's a lot of emotions, a lot of physical. Okay, I got to cool. I can relax.
Yeah.
I won, and then wait, I got to get back in the gym because I got another fight coming
It's a
up.
different type of mentality if you have 3 fights within 50 days. You don't
Yeah,
take
yeah,
breaks.
it was crazy, and then me having a conversation with the sponsors. Hey, look, we're gonna go on for 3 fights. I need you to ride with us for the 3 fights, because if we're doing a fight by fight basis,
Hmm.
and they think, okay, cool, she's gonna fight once every couple of months or whatever, but then all of a sudden, hey man, she's fighting 3 times in the span. I need you
Hmm.
guys to get on board. Okay, we're gonna do it. We'll give you X amount of dollars. Cool.
Hmm.
You, these are all the things you got to go ahead and take on, and then we had a responsibility for selling tickets. So for each one of those fights, you had to go ahead and sell a number of tickets. Man, you got to go ahead and have a little fan base, and you got to
Of course.
lean on them to back you. So You guys want to see me more often? Great, and this and that. And then you have to grow your fan base because now new people saw her. Wow, I saw her fight, man. And then the other part is this: when a fighter fights, one thing she's always great at, even now, she makes the rounds. She makes the rounds after fight. She won't even. She'll like put on her a sweatshirt, a coat, and she'll still have her fight trunks on. She's walking around with her belt, and she's in the stands taking pictures with everyone.
That's
She's
great.
in the stands taking pictures with everyone. There was fights at the super fight cards where she would literally be, Chocolatito or and always fighting, and she's walking around doing her victory lap, taking pictures of everybody that wants to take pictures, and that's great, And Jamel does the same thing, whether it's his fight card or someone else's. He shows up, people want pictures. You got to do that,
You got to
And
do this. It's important to pay attention to your fans.
absolutely. And look, fan post that picture, and they're going to tag you in it, and they're going to go ahead and all their friends are going to see it, and they're going to be like, wow, because I remember, listen, I've met a lot of pro athletes over my life, and I remember who was nice to me and who wasn't. And people that are perceived to be nice, I have a different story on certain people. I go, man, you know what? That guy's a jerk. That guy's a jerk because, man, I remember specifically what they told me and, their interaction with me. Whereas there's been other people that I've met and they've been great. Like I was a big fan of Hamed versus Kevin Kelly. Kevin Kelly was a great fighter.
What a fight.
Fun to fight, fun to watch. And I remember running into Kevin Kelly the night of Triple G against Rubio, Marco Antonio Rubio. Actually gave Kevin Kelly a ride back to his hotel.
No way.
Yeah. So
That's awesome.
We're talking, and me and Kevin we're shooting the shit and talking, and then all of a sudden he goes in and tells me, I go, hey Kevin, where are you going? And he's like, oh, we're underneath the StubHub, right? Or the Dignity Health, whatever they call it now.
Right.
So we're there, and then he goes, hey, going back to my hotel. I said, hey, come on, I'll give you a ride. He said, sure, all right. So, just being able to go ahead, and it's surreal because I met him and he was a gentleman. He's a fun guy, and it was a great experience. Versus you meet somebody and you think, oh man, I thought highly of them forever, and then they're a jerk,
And it's important to understand that if you're a professional athlete, you have to care about your brand when you're meeting with your fans. You're still working on your brand. You're representing yourself. So and that's kind of like what I see the profession of boxer, like on the professional scale. It's not just being in the ring, it's being outside the ring and still carry that brand because you're still at work when you're meeting with your fans.
You're an ambassador of not only your brand, but of everybody that sponsors you. So
exactly.
If you go ahead and, you're wearing the brands of everybody, like Jamel, we're able, like, he was the first big athlete that we were able to go ahead and get to, in the United States to the Adidas brand, right? And I had to sell Adidas on Jamel. Like, I had to get them to buy into, like, my plan is that in a year he's going to be a world champion, and we're going to do this. And we just signed our deal with Top Rank, and he hadn't even fought a fight for Top Rank yet. We're just leaving.
I'm surprised you're not bragging about this deal. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, no, like, listen, we worked hard on it, and we're actually, the great partners, and I love my family over at Adidas Boxing, Chris and Amar and all those guys, because and Big Sal that helps us out. It took me sharing my vision with them and telling them, hey, look, this is what we're going to do. And Sal knows it because I told him I do. He's a friend. I talk to him all the time. And I told him, hey, look, this is what we're going to do. And everything that I promised, we delivered on. A year later, he was a world champion. We started our first fight for Top Rank was May of 2018. And by May 2019, he was a world champion. And, they've been amazing partners. And through our relationship with them and our sponsorship deal, they've opened up opportunities where he's done things for photo shoots for Dick's Sporting Goods, and he's done photo shoots for other national campaigns that they're involved in, and they've flown him out, they've taken care of him, they've paid him extra money. This is great. Like, these are opportunities that we were able to go ahead and get because they believed in him and we believed in them, and we did everything and we continue that we need to do to have that relationship flourish and grow even more. Because so goes his deal, so goes the deal and opportunity for other fighters,
Absolutely. So Jerry, going back to nowadays, right?
Yes.
We're sort of in a funny situation right now. We are during this lockdown. We're like currently all sitting at homes because that's what we're
Right.
supposed to do, and so do the athletes. What do you think is happening right now in these terms? And I mean, I just saw like a tweet from Steve Kim. He's like, I think based on the people that I talked to, athletes needs to stay prepared because you never know when the thing's gonna happen again,
Yes.
when the fights are gonna be allowed. We see Dana White, trying to make UFC happen. When do you think, based like on your personal forecast, when do you think the fights will be back on?
First off, this is during this time, Jamel will be the first one to tell you that you have to understand what it is to really be a manager. You have to reach out to your athletes. Not all your athletes are going to be uh, financially set to make it through this period. So you have to reach out to them and see if there's anything they need, and if there is anything they need, then uh, you know uh, Jamel makes sure that hey, we get those
Right. I
athletes
mean, it's
taken
tough
care
on the fighters because I mean, a lot of them are
of.
depending just to have the fights, to make sure they're fighting so that they can get their paycheck, and now like this opportunity is cut from them. So that's
Right, and some look. Truth be told, is some young fighters, um, have part-time jobs. They may go ahead and work as a trainer, or may work as a uh, have clients that they help.
or even further than that. I know fighters who
Fitness.
drive Uber. I know
Yeah,
fighters
look,
who
yeah,
all of that,
and
all kind of
and
jobs.
there's a lot of that that's been cut away because, as you stated, the quarantine.
Hmm.
Everybody has to stay home. So, with that being said, it's important we reach out to fighters, and Jamel is good at it, and he's a great partner because he makes sure that the fighters that we have a responsibility to, that we
Hmm.
keep them informed,
Hmm.
that we let them know what we're doing to get the ball going again. Because Jamel and I aren't wait and see guys. We're guys that like to get out there and poke the crowd and figure out what's going on.
Hmm.
So I understand. So goes MMA. So
Hmm.
goes the UFC. So goes boxing.
Hmm.
I understand that. So you know, May 9th, there is going to be a UFC card, and then there's going to be fights after that. Um, and through my partnerships and my relationships, we have fighters that are going to get the opportunity to fight again on those cards. It's great, but because I know that not only are those fighters going to get to earn, but also that means that we're closer to getting boxing back. And I like to go ahead and do my homework and figure out, okay, where are they going to fight? Who's the sanctioning body that's going to approve it? Okay, this is going on here. Okay, great. Then this promoter is going to benefit from it also because this promoter is licensed there too.
Hmm.
And we connect the dots, and then we start making calls and asking questions, and Jamel's never scared to pick up the phone and start calling some of these promoters and asking, "Hey, what's going on here?" or "What's going
Right.
on?" Or he's a vest. He's an interested party because obviously his fight with Frampton,
Right.
the dynamic on that changes. It goes from being a big stadium or arena fight to they may
Yeah,
have to fight.
he's one of those dudes who has skin in the game. It's
Yes,
literally, depending. He's also depending on the whole situation. So when he's calling, I'm assuming when he's calling the other parties, they respect that he is interested in that and he has skin in the game and he's personally invested in this as well.
absolutely, and they understand because look, you know, there's the Anthony Joshua's and the Canelo Alvarez's of the world that are big successful fighters, that have made huge amounts of money. You could throw Gennady Golovkin in there too, and Tyson Fury. But then there's a lot of world champions that haven't made that kind of money, and there's a lot of uh, world champions that yeah, they have some money saved up, but they don't want to go out and drain their savings,
Right.
uh, because of this period. They want to get back to work, like that savings was for um, college educations or for buying a house
Hmm.
or other things. And they're trying to go ahead and, just like the rest of us, the rest of the world, they want to get back to work,
Hmm.
and that's where it takes us making phone calls and calling the commissions and calling promoters and calling our partners and just figuring out there's got to be a way. And yeah, there's it's been a good thing because we're definitely are ahead of the pack in terms of knowing who's moving forward and when is it going to take place and what are the proposed. So today's a better day than 2 weeks ago, and I think fans can be patient. There's a lot going on in the world, but
You see a light at the end of the tunnel.
I see a light at the end of the tunnel, and I see a way that this can be done in a safe manner where the fighters are protected, the people that are working the event are protected, and the camera crews and the production are protected also, and this can go forward.
For sure.
So I'm optimistic that soon we'll get back to be able to provide people with a bit of a distraction, because look, I don't know how many more times we could take the cornhole championships on ESPN. That is not the content I want to see. So look, I'm sure that a fight would be a nice distraction for boxing fans and for sports fans too.
Absolutely.
And look, if I applaud a platform like ESPN because if they go through with the May 9th, that's going to be a distraction that a lot of people need,
Absolutely.
And a fight goes on and everybody watches. It doesn't matter whether you're a fan or not.
Oh my God.
You can't help but watch,
I can only imagine how huge going to be the very first fight, whether UFC or boxing. It's just going to be crazy just to be that first fight to sort of break through this crisis.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's one of the things that, that we went ahead and talked about. Jamel wants to be the first big fight in boxing that is back, and him and Carl Frampton yesterday they filmed a interview segment with Christina Poncher, and
I saw that. Yeah, it's already posted on. She posted that on Twitter this morning.
Yeah, and Jamel was adamant about let's do this. We don't need a crowd.
That's awesome.
I fought. He understands. He fought in empty arenas once upon a time when the only people there were his friends and some family members. So hey, look, we're adapting to the times. And if
of course
he needs to fight in an empty arena, then so be it. Let's get it on because he has a family. Carl Frampton has a family, and at the end of the day, they need to both earn a living. Even Sanisa, she's went ahead and built her makeshift gym at home, and she's staying ready because she's chomping at the bit. And also the other fighters that we work with, like we have a kid that was in camp with Jamel. They were doing a pre-camp before all this that happened.
Mm-hmm.
A very talented fighter out of Cincinnati, Ohio. Desmond Jarman. He's 8-0, 4 knockouts, over 350 amateur fights. He's ready. We have Sean Simpson in Chicago, another undefeated bantamweight prospect. He's ready to roll. We have a bronze medalist in the World Games, World Championships. Micaiah Krebs out of New York, and she's ready to make her pro debut. And we have a couple other surprises coming. We have some big names that we've went ahead and been able to work deals with and sign. So we can't wait for boxing to get going again, so we can go ahead and spread share the news with everybody.
Absolutely, and so am I, Jerry. We've been talking to an hour and a half, and it's sort of like flew by so quickly. So I'm so happy that you reached out and that we can actually have this conversation because
likewise, thank you.
Yeah, because I see so much experience and so much calculation behind what you're saying in terms of like how you work and how you do things, and I grew to respect you within this an hour and a half so quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And and like I said, there's a lot of people that know me in boxing, and I know the media knows me. Like the guys that have been around for a while, the Steve Kims of the world, the Doug Fishers, these guys know me. Tom Gerbasi, they all know who I am and what I do. But it's being able to go ahead and just, the success of the fighters is allowed me to go ahead and share more of what it is exactly I do. Like for example, Jamel won Comeback Fighter of the Year for the Ring magazine, and that was huge. And I remember getting the call from Doug Fisher, and Doug Fisher goes, "Hey, I just spoke to Jamel and got some quotes for the Ring magazine issue." And I said, "Okay, cool." And he goes, "We gave him Comeback Fighter of the Year." And I said, "That's great." Awesome. And he goes, "Hey, he spoke highly of you." And I said, what? And he goes, yeah, he gave you a lot of credit for his career. And I said, wow, that means a lot. And I said, and it's just the fighter. You do right by the fighter, and the fighter's going to go ahead and represent for you, and the fighter's going to go ahead and tell everyone that you've done well for them, and that's more important to me, than anything, because when we're able to have success stories like Jamel and success stories like Sinisa, and we're going to do this with other fighters. I wholeheartedly believe that the other fighters that we work with are each going to become world champions. They're each going to become world champions because they have the talent, and we have the game plan and the blueprint of how to get them there. It's just a matter of time.
No
And
doubt.
yeah, and it's just this can happen very quickly here. I just need them to go ahead and buy into what we're doing, and the rhyme and the reason behind it, and we can get it done. So I'm thankful that you're able to have me on, and I'm able to go ahead and share a little bit of the knowledge that I have, and my experience, and you know I'm looking forward to.
It's an honor for me, sir. How can people find you? How can they reach out to you if they would like to work with you?
Yeah, yeah, on Twitter, and I'm on Twitter, and on also on Instagram as Wildcard King. So that's WILDCARD KING.
Perfect.
Wildcard King on both, and you can give myself a follow.
Is it the same handle for Twitter and Instagram?
Yeah, it's the same handle for
Perfect.
Twitter and Instagram, and you'll see me there. You'll see my pictures with Jamel, with Sinisa, and if anyone that has any questions, or any fans or fighters that have questions, feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much, sir. And once again, it was an honor, and I wish you all best of luck with you and your clients and your team.
Thank you, and hopefully soon we'll be able to go ahead and be back on, and with some big news, and once we get the ball rolling here in the next couple of weeks, I think I'll be able to go ahead and share some big news with you guys.
Thank you so much, Jerry. Alrighty.
All right, thank you.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.